Thank you for coming to Freedom House. A few days ago, we had this activity at Babujan to celebrate the life and work of the founding member of our party, Dr. Jagan, and his wife, Mrs. Jagan. I believe the activity was a great one, and as I pointed out in my presentation to those who were there, that going to Babujan allows us not only to talk about Dr. Jagan, what he meant to this country, his legacy to the country and to the party, his struggles for the improvement of the lives of Guyanese. But the opportunity allows us a chance to reflect on the state of our country and to talk a bit about our policies and the challenges before us as a party. And we did precisely that. We spoke about what the PPP means to Guyana and its proud record of having at every single moment in our history from its formation being on the side of the people and struggling in the cause for freedom and unity in Guyana. And this is substantiated in our entire history, the written history of this country, by facts. And no attempt to distort those facts will go unanswered, because we have a preponderance of evidence to show that from its formation, from the beginning of the party, we sought national unity and we sought to change the lot of Guyanese. And we've led the struggle for independence and subsequently for freedom from the PNC's dictatorship. We've also, since coming back into office in '92, if you look at the economic history of the country now, you will see what we have done in this country pre-oil. And that's substantiated by facts, and no one can take that away from the PPP. Not the rumor mills, not the pontification by self-righteous people. They can't change the facts that the PPP took a bankrupt country, couldn't pay its way. The country that has been documented was one of the poorest in the hemisphere, and not by the PPP. You should look at the Caribbean Conference of Churches and many others. The IMF, the State Department reports that people love to go to, and you will see that we have transformed that country into the most vibrant economy in this part of the world pre-oil. And so that history, we need to speak about it and to be proud of it. And we spoke extensively about a big challenge that has always been a challenge in this country, about the question of racism. So I saw an editorial in the Stabroek News today, and they said that racism is complex and historically rooted, as though we don't know that. And because it's complex and historically rooted, and it was foisted on our people, the divisions that came in the 50s were engineered, and the people who helped the engineering of that, the local counterparts of this engineered division of our people, many are still alive and many are still in the PNC. Mr. Hamilton Green is one of those. And this is clearly documented, and if you need evidence of it, you just have to go to the source documents. It was an engineered division, and then 3 decades of undemocratic and racist rule did not help the country to bring people together. So we are painfully aware that the racism that we sometimes experience in Guyana has a historical precedent. So we are not naive about that. Secondly, we believe that we must speak about it openly. It's the countries that want to sweep this issue under the carpet or believe that speaking about racism is the purview of a selected group of people. Then they're wrong. The PPP has a history of confronting the most troublesome issues head on, and we will do so now. So the fact I saw the editorial said that we were there to whitewash the historic racism that exists in Guyana. We're not whitewashing the historic racism, we're confronting it. And they said that it seems as though we shared notes. President Ali and me as General Secretary of the party. We didn't share notes, but if we believe the matter is sufficiently serious to warrant the attention of both the President and the General Secretary of our party. And that is why we spoke about it, because we attach great importance to national unity. And we believe we have to fight racism head on. So it seems as though we were stepping on the toes of some people. Some NGOs, self-righteous NGOs, believe that they're the only ones who can talk about racism. And heaven saves this country should we have national unity, because what else will they do? They do nothing else in this country except stoking racism. They live for that. They don't have constituencies. They want a divided country because it creates an opportunity for their own relevance. And some newspapers and NGOs live on this. They're praying that we'll never have a multiracial party like the PPP in this country, and that it grows stronger and stronger, or that we have national unity, because they wouldn't have reason to exist. That's why they react in such a manner. And secondly, this editorial is so concerned about us speaking on racism, but for the past 2.5 years, every single day, the PNC has been not only speaking about racism, but has been practicing racism. They couldn't find an editorial about PNC's racism. Every single utterance out of their mouth and the opposition has been about racism and demonstrates this. But one speech condemning racism and saying we are a party that will fight it with all of our strength and try to bring all of our people together. warrants an editorial, but not a single editorial about the daily occurrences of racism and the promotion of racism. And it says it needs more than words. That's what the guest editorial said. And I suspect, as it says, it's a guest editorial. It might not be the core view of the Starbuck News, because from time to time they bring in these jaundiced people to write things, and this is a guest editorial. And maybe from a PNC man himself who wrote this. But so first of all, people were upset. Some of them from this self-righteous group, and Mr. Norton was upset too. So they were upset for different reasons. Now, the editorial, I saw somewhere people said it was cheap politics. I think it was the Starbuck News again, for me to hail out Mr. Ferrier, who came to our Babujan activity, and I saw him in the crowd, and I said, I welcome Mr. Ferrier here. He's a relative of Mr. Norton, and I'm glad he sees the light. That's all. It was in passing. Wasn't intended for as a gimmick or any serious consideration. But this tells you a lot. Mr. Norton's reaction to something, a passing comment by me, tells you a lot about the individual. Now, we spoke at Babujan about the development program of this country and how we intend to ensure that all of our people benefit. We talk about health care, we talk about job creation, we talk about fighting racism, we talk about the oil and gas sector, ensuring that more benefits come to our people. Mr. Norton did not have a single thing on that day to say about any of the policy issues. On the way back down, I saw he issued a statement saying the man is not his brother. I never said the man is his brother. And two, the man is a criminal, he's an arsonist, and birds of a feather flock together, meaning we're criminals too. So I recall the gentleman sending me a note with a childhood picture of them together, with a long thing about how his mother took care of Norton and Norton is useless. And I asked him, I called him and said, can I release it? And he said, yeah, release it. So Mr. Norton then left Bamba Mali and went to Bench Cup program, and I thought was to talk about Babujan and the policy making, to deny that the man is his relative. Now, clearly, what does this say to you about a leader? That this is small thinking, petty-mindedness. You know, no, only a junior functionary mentality could conjure up something like that. As I said before, Norton is not cut from leadership cloth. You have a whole range of policy-making issues to address and to represent the alternative. And that's all you are going to talk about. Oh, this man is not my relative. That's all. From a passing comment, I've said before, and it was on full display, that it demonstrated the morose nature of Mr. Norton, his vindictiveness, the bitter side he has. He's now ready to address serious matters. And so, but it tells you something else. Now, this guy was one of the key activists for APNU in 2020. And it's true that he was questioned for arson in the Linden issues when we had a fire there. The fact is he was a key activist for the PNC. And Mr. Norton just threw him under the bus. Now he's a criminal. And this is, I've said this before, the PNC has no gratitude or loyalty to people who basically, what in a Guyanese way, throw their belly out for them. Work very hard for them. They did it with all their polling agents. Said that the PPP bribed them. People who had acted conscientiously for them. So it tells you a lot about the PNC. That small comment that Mr. Norton has made is demonstrating his vindictiveness. He is not commented, or at the first day, all he was focused on is a passing comment that I made at Babujan. But we dealt with more fundamental issues there that should be of concern. We accuse the PNC as a racist party. He has a hard time defending that because it is true. It's racist. And it wasn't just the fact, as Starbuck News pointed out, that we had a multi-racial crowd here, which most parties in this country can't put together. That's a fact. It was, we were saying, look at this crowd, but look at our policies too. Look at our history. Look at Chedi Jagan's history of fighting for national and racial unity. So yes, the multi-ethnic crowd we have here is because of our policies. It is not a contrived thing. It is because over the years we have worked consistently through our policy making on our programs and government activities to bring people together. And I'm not going to spend today because I can give you evidence of this. I can give you evidence of every little thing in communities that are nearly 100% Afro-Guyanese. And when we compare the history, the economic history of those communities, and that has to be done if Starbuck News and the others are serious and they want to be independent arbiters and brokers. Be fair to us too. Be fair to us. Look at the economic history of these communities. Take Linden, for example, and then you will see the progress made under the PPP versus APNU. Economic progress. Look at job opportunities in this country. Look at ownership, from land to vehicles, etc., and see which era people have made the greatest advances economically in life. And you will see that it all happened under the PPP. People of every race, including Afro-Guyanese. So we need to be fair about that. Now, clearly, one example used in this editorial, this guest editorial, and I want to spend a bit of time on this because it's important that the country kicks into this analytical mode. So, says one example of President Ali intransigent is the refusal to conform the appointments in the offices of the Chancellor of the Judiciary and the Chief Justice. So that is seen as PPP racism. Now, Carl Singh, you recall how this provision came into the Constitution. It came out of, before we had this provision, the constitutional provision is the president could make the appointment through a consultation with the leader of the opposition. Last week I explained about all of the constitutional reforms that we put in place to ensure governance, greater governance or shared governance. And there are several of those features in the Constitution. Last week I spoke about that when we spoke about the issue of executive power sharing. So, but one of the features was this one too, to have greater collaboration between the parties in appointment of the top posts in the judiciary. Now, it never really worked because the opposition, when I was president, vetoed the appointment effectively, a substantive post. So we couldn't appoint Carl. Singh acted for many years, left the office, and was never confirmed. It wasn't racism at that time. Now, Granger didn't confirm anyone. In fact, he wanted to remove the current chancellor by was touting another name, not the current chancellor. And he, after putting up some search committee, it wasn't racism then. Now it becomes racism. But assuming President Ali goes through a search committee and brings in an Indo-Guyanese now, suggests that he becomes the chancellor or the chief justice, and confirm them, that will be, what will that be? We have 2 Afro-Guyanese now heading the judiciary, who've been heading the judiciary. And this is seen as racism because he refuses to conform or is not prepared to act immediately on conforming them. Records matter. So how could this be racism, but it's cited as an example of racism? Then it mentions about the historic issue. And I wanted to address this at Babujan from the perspective of duplicity, but I did not have the time. So I want to thank them for bringing it up, the guest editorial, about what happened in 2015. Now, it's well documented what took place in 2015 when APNU was campaigning in some villages. We had it on tape, it was recorded, what they did in the morning, election morning, beating some drums, urging people to come out and throw these. At that time, some of the activists used this word, "Koli people," out, and I mentioned that. And I said at Babujan the same day, if anyone in the PPP uses this sort of language, we'll kick them out. It was a condemnation of racism. I said, we will not tolerate that language in the PPP. When Christopher Ram joined this Christopher Ram, and I would have sued him for defamation because when the case was thrown out, but we're in opposition, and I thought it would distract from throwing the PNC out of office at that time. That's why I didn't take legal action against him. But he wanted to get in APNU's good book. So he filed a private criminal charge against me. Didn't put in the part where I said, if anyone in the PPP uses this sort of language, we'll kick them out. It was a condemnation of racism. And then they got a jaundice magistrate too, to prevent me from, for a private criminal charge, to prevent me from traveling. Of course, all of that is water under the bridge. And had it not been we're in opposition and I was the leader of opposition, I would have taken legal action against both of them. But they bring that back up in an editorial as though it's a fact. And if you only fact-checked what took place, it was a condemnation of racism. So this is something I just wanted to set the record right. But this same Christopher Ram today, you had a WPA person who said that Indians were brought in this country and they used to live in pipes in India. I don't know what kind of pipe she was talking about, but she said they were living in some slum pipes or something maybe. And the conscience of the country, Christopher Ram, did not see it necessary to file a private criminal action. The conscience of the country, because he was sucking up to APNU at that time. He was hoping probably to get a big post in government elections, or just were just about to be held, and he wanted to target me because I was racist. So that's it. We need to go back and look at the history of it and fact check a lot of these issues. Now, we will continue. Let me say to those in the media and also in these NGOs, we don't believe fighting racism is the purview of some obscure group. We believe it's part of our DNA, part of the PPP's philosophy, part of our government's approach, and every single day we will fight racism in words and in deeds too, by making sure that people feel included. If we did not believe that there was a historic problem, coming back to the question of history, in opposition, we're the only party that said, and I, as General Secretary of the party, I said, the People's Progressive Party will work harder to ensure that our party looks like the country. Our policies are clearly, on our policy making, is for all the people of the country. But we have a lot of Indo-Guyanese in the party. Our Amerindian membership has grown enormously in the party, major way, and we are underrepresented by Afro-Guyanese in the party. Which other party has made such a public admission? This was years ago when we were in opposition. And we continue to speak about this, and we said we will work hard to change that. And we're doing so. And we've seen people like Mr. Ferrier and many others, who are coming to the party because they see what we stand for. Which other party? So when they said we don't, the Babujan speech was not the be-all and the end-all. It was the president of the country and the general secretary of the largest party in this country saying that our commitment is to fight racism and to build a multi-ethnic party. We should have been applauded for that. But you know what? We're stepping on the toes of some organizations that believe they're the only ones can speak about this. They don't have work otherwise. They don't have work otherwise. And as I said before, they will rule the day, or they will, they just don't want our country to be united, or else they may not have a role for themselves. We'll come back, and I wanted to address that. I have not seen on March 28th, a couple of days after this Babujan activity, the WPA, the defunct WPA that's trying to resurrect itself, had another meeting where the racist rhetoric was even ramped up. And we have not seen any condemnation. They condemn us for condemning racism and saying we will fight racism. And WPA had one of the most racist set of meetings. And we didn't see anything of that nature. The same sort of holier than thou attitude was not displayed there. So we heard Clive Thomas said that we are, and then they had a press conference to reinforce this, that we are bribing people, Afro-Guyanese, to come to us. So this concept of bribe And it follows what David Hines has been saying, that Gita Chandan is a slave catcher. They doubled down on that rhetoric at the last meeting, and he explained why he called her a slave catcher. Nobody has been condemning this. Because they believe that any Afro-Ghanese who has come to us, that's his concept, they have been brought over either by bribe or induced to come over. So this goes to the philosophy of ownership. And it's a racist philosophy that in this country, you can only identify with a group based on race, not on economic interests, not on progress, not on who's doing better for the country, not on any of those sorts of things. But regardless of what the WPA and the PNC do, destroy the country, kill democracy, being undemocratic. If you're Afro-Ghanese, you're bound to turn a blind eye to all of that. When you take away the $10,000 from your children, or don't give you any scholarship but take scholarship for themselves, or no housing, you must turn a blind eye to all of that and stay in this camp based on race, which is what we are trying to break down. Listen to the philosophy behind what they're saying. So you're being bribed. So if you get your house lot, or you get a job under the PPP, or you get a grant or a scholarship, it's a bribe. The ones who you must work hard now to elect those so they could collect the bribes, like Clive Thomas and Ogunseya and the Hines, they were all part of the PNC machinery. They were all getting cushy jobs. They were driving fancy vehicles. They stayed quiet on rigging elections. They're talking about democracy now, but David Hines wanted elections canceled, the last elections, when he knew they lost the elections. So, and power sharing for them is only when you're out of office, you want power sharing, executive power sharing, but you want to bully your way in. We can come in through the guns and force our way in. They're not going to intimidate the PVP. We know their number. Clive Thomas and David Hines, they've been con men and fooling people all their lives, and not going to say it. All of their lives, only for their own personal self-aggrandizement. We saw it in the last government. They were not fighting for Afro-Ghanese. Their silence was bought by the cushy jobs that they had. And so they've made this a business. People have to see through this. This is a defunct party that is trying to resurrect itself by polarizing our country. Polarizing, that's all they live for. They want, so anybody who receives any benefits and have come to us, we made it clear. We're working to gain support by what we have done. We are not ashamed to say as a political party, we want greater support in Afro-Guyanese communities, but we're prepared to work for it. Work for it by ensuring we address people's concerns, and that's what we're addressing. And not they believe they can do this. So this is what we have seen from all the noise recently. And you know, the PNC doesn't want to openly push the racism line because they're under scrutiny now, international scrutiny and everyone else. Because what they've tried in the US with Rickford Burke, another criminal, and he is a criminal, not for what he says, he's using the social media posts to extort, blackmail businessmen for money This is a con man, a criminal who resides in the US, who every day spouts racism. The same self-righteous people will not for a single day condemn him. Not a single day condemn him. But they are not succeeding. They've sought, you recall some institute they had for action against discrimination. I saw they had a meeting in West Coast Bobbies. They have one now in Golden Grove. So ACNU cannot carry the racist rhetoric because having gone abroad and argued this, so they're using these front organizations, the WPA and this one, to carry the racist rhetoric to the community. And then they would roll in to reap the political rewards. So we have seen this playbook over and over again. And you will not have the self-righteous, the TIGIs or the GHRA condemning this. You won't see that condemnation. Self-righteous, but they will condemn a speech we make condemning racism. But if you listen to the rhetoric, it's all racist. From the criminal bar to this our Institute for Action Against Discrimination. They're busy setting up all these institutes. They wrote, you recall last year, some letter was signed by most of them to Vice President Kamala Harris. And when you look at it, it's outright laughable, the things that they put in the letter to Vice President Kamala Harris. Outright, downright laughable. So we know their record. They're using a playbook that's old. They need to reinvent their playbook. They've done that historically. If anyone wants to look at the historic ways that the PNC has promoted racism, it is through the rumor mills. They go to some communities and they spread rumors on the ground and the rumor machinery about the PPP and racism, and that's not succeeding so much because they're being exposed. You recall Rickford Burke running to the camera the last time when David Hines said that Nagaputu and Ramjatan just served one purpose, was to bring Indian votes to the PNC. That came out. That would have been said in a circle without social media, without it coming out. And so we have seen, don't take this WPA seriously. I saw Ogun said he wants to be, he wants to plead guilty to treason. This guy is a non-entity, never had an impact on the country, nor anybody, never fought for a single person. Probably was part of the machinery that helped cause Walter Rodney's demise. They never condemned the PNC. They're in bed with the PNC, the people who killed Walter Rodney, their leader. In fact, that's the group. So we are not going to be sidetracked by this defunct organization. It's defunct. They're the new conduit and this for pushing the racism that the PNC wants. They probably decided carefully that this is how it would best serve their interests if they have a division of labor. And their job is to push the racism. And then Norton issues these lofty statements. The ERC looks very racist, but I want them to act professionally. Well, if the ERC is acting professionally, and I hope that they will do this urgently, then they should examine all of these statements. Now I wanted to, in the same vein, because many people we have had some criticisms from some of the same groups and maybe other well-meaning people who believe that we're intolerant to criticisms. And we have always fought for a free press, the PPP. It's not a criticism. It's when it comes from the self-righteous group. And the last time I spoke here, that the same level of scrutiny that government is afforded to government, civil society should also be put under the same level of scrutiny to determine legitimacy and whether they represent interests or personal views. So if the media wants to be fair, then they should put the same yardstick, use the same yardstick to measure legitimacy for all the groups. So there are a few civil society organizations that have big constituencies that we've been engaging with. These are the ones that have big constituencies. The religious organizations. They have large numbers of people. We have a great friendly relationship with them, with the religious groups in this country, and we've been working to ensure that religious freedom, as protected by our Constitution, blossoms in our country and that people are tolerant. We've had a little stormy relationship with the labor movement, largely because we believe that the TUC has been hijacked by some PNC individuals, and they are not serving the interests of the workers as they should. Nevertheless, we have been very cordial, and we've been working with the labor movement because the labor movement has constituencies. The private sector is another big civil society organization where we've been engaging with and on policy making level at every level. So we have been engaging with the big constituency-based civil society organizations. Then you have a few advocacy-based organizations that operate in the area of transparency. They are the custodians of a transparent government, and they're supposed to hold you to court. And a lot of what they do, they then feed into their work, gets fed into international organizations. So the TIGI report gets fed into the Transparency International report globally, the same thing the GHRA, etc. So for those international reports to be accurate about our country and accurate about Guyanese, these organizations have to have some legitimacy or credibility to not only to be fair and also to ensure that they are not they're not biased, that they're fair, they're not biased, and that they are legitimately put together, that they're not partisan organizations. So I would like the Starbuck News and many others, because they find a lot of resonance in particularly those newspapers, Kaichor News too, and some other places, that to put them through the same litmus test that others have to go through. So it's not that we hate the GHRA, but everybody knows that this is a one-man organization. How does that organization allow itself renewal and legitimacy? How could, for 40 years or so, one man be heading the organization? In any place in the world, that would be frowned upon. Where is the turnover? Where is the democracy? Where are the meetings held? Where are the annual general meetings? These are companies. Or do they have how much money did they collect from abroad? How was the money spent if you're not producing financial statements? Aren't these important? Are you being paid by someone to do this sort of work? A hatchet job. Are those not legitimate questions? So when they said that they had all their ducks lined up, they said that in a row, and the Attorney General said, no, you have, you're not as pristine as you represent to the country. How could that be hatred for the organization? They should be happy that we expose this organization, and then the question should have gone to GHRA from the newspapers. When do you intend to put yourself in order? Why is it that only after the 2020 elections, the President Ali was declared that you set up a Facebook, a social media presence? You didn't need it before? These are legitimate questions. How come you can't, for 3 weeks pass and you can't read a Gonzalo statement, but you're commenting on every other issue under the sun? And it's not because they commented on the contract with what's the contract for the ID cards. It's not because of that. That's done every single day. People comment on contracts. And if you look at procurement, we can show you the differences in how we have procured in the period before 2015, how that deteriorated and how we have restored some semblance to orderliness in the procurement system of the country. We can defend our record on that, but that's besides the point. Besides the point. And the same thing with TIGI that we spoke on. Why would you issue a report of that nature? Why would you issue a report that is a set of lies in 2019 when we saw a major jump in our status? We improved enormously globally, but in that period, really, I don't put too much store on these indices, global indices, because I think they're put together on the basis of limited information in the developing world with a kind of northern bias, and also based on flawed reports that come from bias into local organizations, as we have proven in this case with TIGI. So that entire report, which cited this local report that said that Guyana has improved its transparency because the PNC has improved they publish the oil and gas contracts. They stopped a corrupt parking meter project, and they improve the Integrity Commission, when the fact was that those were the only 3 years in the past 23 years that no government official submitted statements to the Integrity Commission. How could a report so patently false? And they must have some introspection. I called on them to repudiate publicly that report now that it has been exposed. Publicly repudiate it and withdraw it. Withdraw it. That would be credibility then. But they have not done so. So we are not opposed to NGOs. Let me give you some examples of the NGOs. I'll just give you a couple of examples. So since we got into office, we've been working to bring help to lots of people. NGOs that actually work in the service sector. We have built up partnerships with a number of people. Take, for example, children. we're very concerned about children and abuse. So there are two major NGOs that work now to do forensic interviews with children and do counseling. ChildLink Inc. and Blossom Inc. These are the two NGOs that operate independently of the government. They do valuable work with children, particularly when they are abused, especially sexual abuse. In 2019, their subvention, ChildLink subvention, was $12 million. In this year's budget, it's $42.6 million. Blossom Inc. got $12 million in 2019. This year they got $61.2 million. 5 times increase from 2019, from $12 million to $61 million. Now, these organizations do valuable work with our children. They're non-governmental organizations too, but they get the full support of the government of Guyana because they don't promote lies every day. They work with our children. That's why they get our support. If we look at through the Ministry of Human Services, over 6,000 women through various programs have been trained through the WIN program, particularly the WIN program, on skill training and even some help in ensuring that they get small grants to start businesses. 6,000 women in the last 2.5 years being trained and given a skill. That's where we're putting money in. You know already on the scholarship program, we have about 14,000 people now in the last 3 years who have gotten scholarships. This is much more than APNO. This is people of every race in Guyana, of every single race in Guyana. Women or children, we don't say go only for children who are abused, etc., in one community. This is for our country. And we work with NGOs. We've given out a lot of other grants, etc. If you look at people with disability, living with disability, 300 have been trained already for jobs. They have even computers now given to them that are appropriate. We now, 5,000 children got 100,000 living with disability, 100,000 cash grant, and they now are automatically on public assistance. We put them on public assistance. We are building now some call centers so that more people with disability can work in these areas. On every region, we plan to put up a major center of that nature. And we're working with the NGOs there, the NGO, those dealing with the blind or others, and they're seeing more help going to them. These are NGOs too. So if you look at our track record, I can go through a long list of NGOs that we've been working on. So when you say, oh, we're not working, we don't like NGOs, we've been working with all the constituency-based NGOs and those who need help. But a lot of these advocacy-based NGOs, they don't have any credibility, and we must expose this. Not just for the government to expose them, or else they have a free ride, and they will allow jaundice reports to be written about our country. I saw a couple of other things For example, you've seen a slew of individuals now, forget the NGOs. Look at their track record. When have they ever supported the PPP? The Balkans, the Jews, all of those who are in the media every single day. They're not. Many of them should be asked, do you get funding from abroad? The so-called environmental saviors that we have now that believe we're causing climate change in the world. You know, Guyana, with its tiny emissions, our country is a net sink. You know, only country, well, one of few countries in the world that's already at net zero and even negative emissions, where the world is trying to get to in 2030. We're the bad guys now in the world. So these, ask them if they're getting funding from abroad. And who is supplying the funding? Who is paying for the lawyers in these court cases? And you will see often these are some northern NGOs that would love us to remain poor and undeveloped, so then they can tell us how to do everything in the world, how to manage everything. And by the way, when talking about that, there is a schizophrenia among many of these people. I saw Christopher Ram in commenting on the PSA. He said, oh, the PSA doesn't address foreign currency shortages. So he wants foreign currency shortages now is a function, the foreign currency market and how it operates is a function of domestic policy making, and it's within the purview of the Ministry of Finance, between the Finance Ministry and the central bank. But he wants Exxon to run the foreign currency market here in Guyana too now. The same people who want us to keep Exxon away, it's colonialism and all of that, we shouldn't bring them here. He wants Exxon to run the foreign currency market. Oh, Exxon is not addressing the foreign currency issue in the PSA. The government is not addressing it. It's such a stupid thing to think about. You shouldn't even write it. You shouldn't even write it. It's so unbelievably stupid. And this is what passes off every single day. And so it's not like we're not frustrated. We're just amazed that so much nonsense could be written and taken seriously. And so I'm asking also the same people out there too, the people who are listening, we need to probe these individuals a bit more to see if they are really the conscience of the country or they have agendas. And you will find a lot of agendas in these things. Mr. Bulai is from the TIGI. So he has not said anything about what we said. Recently he said that the GA is sitting on evidence of cheaper solar power alternative for the gas plant. So we don't have that cheaper. We're not sitting on any evidence. And then he cites some small scale panels that we're doing. If this was the case, then the entire world practically would have gone solar already. But I don't want to be unkind to Mr. Bulai, because the way it's written, the way the story came out, is that he's looking for answers. So we should ensure that we demonstrate this. The difference between base load and cost, or the cost of having a 24-hour system at scale, a 300 megawatt system, will far exceed the 4 cents per kilowatt hour that we are going to get from the gas to energy project. It will far exceed that. In fact, now, the lowest offer that we have had for a system that's not fully battery powered is about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. But if Mr. Bulai can find anybody who will come now and supply the government of Guyana, not at 3 cents per kilowatt hour that he thinks with battery, but a 24-hour system that could come in at 4 cents or 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Anybody who will do that, we're prepared tomorrow to sign up a long-term power purchase agreement with them. Since they will make good money on this if he could find the people who will do that, who will put together a 24 hours solar supply, baseload supply to the grid at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. You will find, remember Glenn Lal said that? He would do that. Until now, he has not done it. So it's good to make a speech and song proper. I'm inclined to have, we don't have to supply the numbers. If he thinks we are wrong, find somebody who's willing to do this, who's willing to do anywhere, all the power companies in the world, all the people who are looking for business in the world. A lot of people will jump at this opportunity to get a PSP, power purchase agreement, from the government of Guyana, guaranteed power purchase agreement for 20 years. You bring it in at 4 or 5 cents per kilowatt hour, since you said it could be done at 3 cents for 20 years, 24 hours solar. And then we will tomorrow do that. The proof is often in the pudding. And you can make 100 different speeches, but then this doesn't happen. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton Green took offense at the fossils thing I said last week. I see a lot of comment on them. And he said fossils can be very valuable too. But I don't think I was talking about the naturally occurring fossils, the inanimate ones. I was talking about the animated fossils. So we have a little clarification to do there. So I just wanted him to know that it's not the fossils that are inanimate or that I'm talking about. He says that I should provide evidence that Mr. Burnham was on the CIA payroll. So I think everybody knows this. Go to the US source documents which was released. I plan to send it to Mr. Green. I'm going to send this over to him, but this was issued, the memorandum for the 303 Committee, Washington, May 23rd, 1969. It says, Prime Minister Bob Burnham of Guyana, who has previously received covert assistance from CIA, requested that the agency provide $10,000 a month for 2 years to support his efforts to build his party, the People's National Congress, into an effective, permanently organized political party. Ambassador Delmore Carlson recommended approval of this request in the amount of $5,000 per month for 2 years, with the understanding that Burnham be aware that the subsidy would be reviewed at the end of the first year and could be terminated if the PNC had not made satisfactory progress. Burnham has been told that we are seeking approval for the $5,000 monthly subsidy. This is from Assistant Secretary Charles Mayer. It's here, but I'll send it over to him today. So I wonder what they will say now about this. There are lots of things pending on the government side, particularly on the oil and gas. I was thinking about not taking questions here today, but I promised another press conference, which I didn't get to do. So I may be able to take a couple of questions from that too today. But I should end here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
see that your party is going forward in the local government election. There have been some debates in the media. One is the oil and gas, like you mentioned. Your party stands not to negotiate the contract. And recently, the headlines that we've seen today in the Petro News and Star News, the Marriott Hotel up for sale, and another debate on why the government is now selling this, seeking to sell the Marriott when it could make tremendous profit in the and they want to know if the reason why you're not selling, why you're selling rather, is because the company is not making money. So they want some clarity on this issue in the government's position. And if the party stands not to renegotiate the current stable deal, it will have an effect on the local government to put chance. Okay.
So the first one on the Marriott, the Marriott. So I saw the article in the Starbuck News. I have it somewhere here, and I wanted to say a couple of words about it. So the article was accurate, very accurate. We've been in the public domain as saying that we want to sell the Marriott, and the Marriott it's been put on, it's been advertised now, and they've received a number of expressions of interest. So the article ended up with, it was controversially built, and the Marriott was unable to service a key loan which the government had to take over, which is factually inaccurate. The fact that Jordan took over the loan, which we were opposed to because we believed that it should have remained on the Marriott's book when we were in opposition and not be brought over, had nothing to do with Marriott being unable to service the loan. So let's establish that. So we hope that that will be corrected. But it was controversially built. And what was the controversy? So it goes back to a history of everything being done in this country being controversial. So the Berbice Bridge was controversially built too. You recall the media, Christopher Ram, and a number of people were opposed to the building of the Berbice Bridge. It was controversially built. It's serving its purpose. Without that bridge, there'd probably be no development in Berbice. It was controversially built, and nevertheless built by the PPP. The stadium was controversially built. Everyone, a lot of the same groups were opposed to the stadium. It was controversially built. The convention center, controversially built. The Hope Canal, controversially built. Now, it's the reason why we have not had flooding in Region 5 for a long time. So it probably paid back for itself. So I can go through almost every single project under the PPP that was controversially built. And you will see that the gas to energy project will be controversially built, but it would end up with having stable electricity for our country. Our prices will be half, the electricity bill would be half of what it is, and provide adequate cooking gas at a lower cost for all of our people. But that will be controversially built too. The bridge, again, across the river will be controversially built. Everything under the PPP. You have a group of people who are like that. So this Marriott, first of all, it was controversially built because people said it's going to be a white elephant. The Kaichor News, until recently, said I owned it. This was a year and a half ago. I appeared on a program with Glenn Lal, and he thought I still owned the Marriott. Jagdeo owned it because they'd spread that lie so much that he even believed his own lies that he spread. And many people believed it. I don't own the Marriott. Marriott was always 100% owned by the government of Guyana. So at that time, it would have been a white elephant. At that time, you recall Vulcan protesting in front of the Marriott at its opening and saying they will convert this into a hospital when APNU got into office. That was the plan. They said that. Didn't get converted into the hospital. Without Marriott today, I doubt whether we would have been able to do what we're doing now. So Marriott has emerged as a profitable venture today. It is making a profit. Secondly, the government didn't need to own a hotel at that time, but the era was that we were not getting new hotels built, and we had to trigger the investment. So now it would be best to sell the Marriott off. You could probably maximize the price that you will get when it's profitable and before the 7 new hotels that are privately built, that are international brands, come on the market. It is the period. You maximize the period in which you sell. This money will go back. Some of it will go to clear off the remaining loan, and some will come to the Treasury to be used back for whatever purpose is determined. And so this is probably the best time when you can maximize the value before you get competition from 7 other hotels coming into the market within a year or 2. You got maximum value. It's a business decision. Governments have to be run like business. It's not cake shop operation, and that is why I thought people would, some of these same people who are writing, you have to operate this way. We can take the same money and trigger 2-3 new projects that add to the capital stock. The Marriott now, because we triggered that, you need 500 people are getting jobs there with direct and indirect employment, 500 Guyanese because of that. But we've been as generous with the others now in helping to trigger a new wave of hotel building, and therefore the government, there's no particular supreme benefit to government owning it. It's better to maximize the money, invest it in something else, back in healthcare or something else, or maybe in another facility. That is what, it's a pure business decision. But I'm glad today that the people who maligned us for a long period, that they are now coming around to the point that the Marriott was a good decision, and it's a profitable venture. And without it, frankly speaking, I don't know what we've done in the last few years in terms of hosting people in this country. The other point is the PSA. Now that has absolutely nothing. Our people, the people who vote for the PPP, they know that the campaign led by Kaitshore and the others is convenient. Now the PPP made some promises. They heard me as General Secretary say before 2020 that we will ensure that we get more out of these contracts, but we will not renegotiate the Starbuck contract. And they heard me say as General Secretary that we will make a number of changes to the regulatory regime that will put the companies, ensure that the oil and gas sector is developing in a safe manner and more benefits accrue to the people. That's before the 2020 general elections, and they voted for PPP. So you're asking me now why they wouldn't vote for the PPP because of this, because since then, what have we done? They have seen not only us saying that we wanted more for people, but we have now started a gas to energy project that will get free gas that will see their bill come down by half, and the project is on the way. We're getting more out of this deal through that. Secondly, they've seen us put in place a local content law that is bringing $700 million of business to the local community. Many of them are busy involved in building homes or constructing for builders because many of them may be ordinary people working, constructing homes for people who will be renting to the oil and gas companies. These are Guyanese. We have nearly 500 local drivers who are supplying now the transportation services to the oil and gas companies, the majors, because we have put in the law that they can only rent from local people. So hundreds of people are getting more opportunities because of what we promised. They have seen us pass the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, the Natural Resources Fund Act, that strengthens transparency. They have seen us strengthen the EPA permit. They have seen us strengthen the licensing regime. They have seen us now going to auction that we promised, not to hand out contracts like that. They have seen us change the fiscal terms for what will be nearly 20-something, it will be 23 of those who will have agreement with the government of Guyana under the Petroleum Act. 23 agreements will now have increased fiscal terms where they'd have to pay higher rates of royalty, etc. So why wouldn't, when they heard in 2020 that we're not going to renegotiate, but we're going to do more, and they voted for us, why wouldn't they do so now when we have made all these changes to undo or to strengthen what APNU did or didn't do? So why would they not? You think because Glenn Lal tells lies every day in the media and hoping, in fact, he has more to worry about because they want to, we've heard about it. This is not altruism. They believe that they can mislead people again, like the AFC and the other third forces that came along. For them, it was, oh, you'll get $8,000 a bag for rice and paddy, and 20% to the sugar, increase in the sugar belt. That excuse is gone. So now a new third force, because they believe the others is defunct, they're exploring forming a party, the oil and gas party, Glenn Lal and the others. So they're telling people now, we'll get you a better deal. You think Glenn Lal could ever negotiate a better deal with Exxon or anybody else? You wouldn't even understand basic concepts to go in a room and negotiate. The newspaper lies on a daily basis. Last week I even mentioned every single headline is distorted. Every single. I saw they said that Exxon getting duty-free to bring in these vehicles. Exxon wanted a fleet of over 100 vehicles duty-free to bring them in. And we said, no, you're not eligible. We're not giving you a fleet of 4x4s. And we did not give the concessions. We did not believe they're eligible. And that would have undermined their business going to locals too. I see a headline on the Kaichor News again. It's every day, it's patent lies. Patent lies. You can't run the sector by lies. And it has to be a serious matter. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And by the way, I've seen a number of people bidding. We did two things to allow people like Glenn Lal and the others who believe that this is a gold mine. We said that if you're local, you can bid too. So imagine these foreigners coming and they have a gold mine, a guaranteed gold mine out there. So that is what Glenn Lal and the others have been saying. This is a gold mine out there, guaranteed. They're making all this money. So we want him and others to benefit from this gold mine too. So we said, put in your bid in the auction. So we'll be happy if the local companies come in the auction. They can be assigned blocks so that he could become wealthy just like that, just like and dig out all the gold from the gold mine too, just like the foreigners are doing. It's a serious, serious business. Yeah, one minute there. Let's here first, and then I come to you.
Could you provide some clarification on the formation of the new company, Guyana Power and Gas? And my specific questions are, what is the precise role of the company administering the Wales Gas and Energy project? And where in the equation GPL finds itself? And could you tell us who the directors are?
I don't, it's a holding company, so it will be government officials who will be directors for the time. Because the company is 100% owned by the government of Guyana. It will become part of GPL. You know, like how we have, I think it's PPDI, that is another company that is also owned by the government and by different places. So you can have several companies owned by the government of Guyana, but GPL is going to administer the power, will be getting the power and be utilizing it. It's just a vehicle, a legal vehicle for the project, but it's 100% owned by the government of Guyana. It's just a legal vehicle. Sometimes you need a legal vehicle to develop a project. Yes.
Yes. To what extent do you envisage these forms of criticism in terms of government transparency and accountability?
Slowly, then, slowly, yes.
Yes, I'm asking to what extent do you consider these criticisms from non-governmental organizations and individuals on transparency and accountability of local governments possibly eroding or already still parliamentary authority? And secondly, based on what you've been told, can you tell us what might be the concerns by the United States about security threats that they talk about with the United States?
About what?
Security threats.
Security threats.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one, we're not worried at all because we're working to have a greater parliamentary majority in 2025. And we believe that's entirely possible, and we believe it's almost a certainty once we put in the work, and we are putting in the work. Today, President Ali is in Region 3. He's been all around the country meeting people. We work on the ground, we address people's concerns. Nobody can doubt that since the PPP got back into office, in spite of COVID, we have returned life to the economy because of our policy making and because of the clear signals we've sent to the business community, because of the confidence that we have demonstrated in the future. No one can deny that. If you talk to APNU supporters, the most hardcore, they acknowledge this. They say, when PPP is in office, you have resources circulating on the ground, in the communities. And we have done that. More people today are employed than in the pre-COVID period under APNU because many lost their jobs. And even in the post-COVID period, people have recovered. More people are working together today. In a community, take for example in Linden itself, with over 1,000 people employed there through the part-time scheme alone, over 1,000 people, they will take home about $80 million because about 1,200 persons, maybe nearly $100 million per month. That is $1.2 billion will be circulating in the economy per year there, just from that one initiative, just one initiative. So clearly that is happening, it's having an impact. Our housing program, if you look at it, young professionals building houses for people, getting them. This is designed not just to help people, but we are hoping that we would also have them vote for us. That is why we want people to judge us on the basis of our work, not on race. The others want only on race. That's it. And we have a more diverse cabinet than they would ever have thought about putting together, with real powers in the hands of our ministers, particularly Afro-Guyanese ministers. They hold substantive portfolios, not a half of a ministry like Ramjatan or an Amna that didn't even know what ministry she had, or what's the one at, anyhow, I don't even remember them. Let me don't waste my time. But public works, the foreign ministry, Ministry of Trade, Tourism and Industry, Labor, the Prime Minister, telecoms, and a whole range of other portfolios. Substantive portfolios, not the token kind of thing in the past. So we believe, Dennis, to answer that we are going to increase the parliamentary seats by the work that we've put in, because we're keeping faith with people and we're doing what we promised in the manifesto. So we're not worried about, these organizations are always there. They were always there throughout my presidency. They were there, and we won the elections. We won the elections, and people have come to know their number by now at GHRA. Who really pays attention seriously to GHRA? You think, no, because we need to do that so that every day internationally, we are a party that believes in ensuring that we fight for what we want. We will fight to end racism. We will fight for development. We will fight against all that we see that put a stumbling block to people coming together. So these guys, that's what they want. They want the confusion. And they're part of a network. And then the earlier point I made about how these reports get fed into international reports. So the TIGI, if we don't expose them here, then Transparency International would have probably thought that they had an excellent report. Excellent report, when we know, every Guyanese know that that report was factually wrong. It was in favor of the PNC. A report developed here that Transparency International then published that report, which is a biased report. If we don't fight against that and expose them, then that will happen over and over again. It will distort what's happening in our country. It will harm our future as a country. So that's why. Oh, the security, I don't want to speak about it. I don't want to speak more about that issue. The particular one with the security alert, right? Yes. That came out recently. But it has, yes, they won yesterday. I don't want to speak about it, but it is a serious matter. It is a serious matter. It is a serious matter that is, and we're giving it all of our attention. It's getting the required seriousness in response from the state apparatus as well as the U.S. government. I don't want to say more. That's all I'd say at this point in time.
Why weren't the companies able to take some actual risk?
Yes, they would be. Yes, there you go.
Yes.
What's the government's policy on developing or enhancing the cybersecurity mechanism?
A lot of work has to be done in this. There is a master plan that we are looking at. So what you saw, there are several components to the master plan. And we're developing sectors that we believe that will give us the biggest impact right now we're trying to automate them to bring them into a really modern era, but we're ensuring that they're compatible with the other systems that we'll put in place and the master plan. So you would have seen us addressing various things. We're addressing the Ministry of Home Affairs now. We've just had an assessment completed and all the organizations under the ministry to simplify and automate processes. We just went for the contract to do the ID card with full biometrics that would allow us to better to develop a whole range of functions and applications, from deepening financial reform to getting better government services, e-government, e-governance, based on the database that we will create there. So we are working separately to make the airport paperless. Where the biometrics from the ID program will feed into the security cameras that are being put across the country. We have it was a safe country, a safe city program. We are moving a safe country program. So you're going to have cameras across the country with facial recognition. So a lot of that, we have to do a number of things. We have to go to the parliament with laws on privacy. They're being drafted now that will be giving effect so that the data will be protected, and any disclosure of private data, there will be serious penalties. Because if you unauthorizedly use the data, for example, you sitting and observing the cameras, and somebody visits a girlfriend or something like that, and you share the data out there because you can track the person, then you'd face a particular hefty fine and a jail term. You can't be utilizing the private data for that purpose. It's for public purpose. Or similarly to if people medical records right across the country, we'll be able to have one chart where you can go to any hospital. So when you go into public or private hospital, you don't have to walk around with charts. They just type in your name and your code, and then all your records will come up. So you can go abroad, you can go here, you have your whole medical history there. And it helps us to do a lot more paperless work. You don't want anyone to disclose that information because it's people's private information. Many countries have that. They have privacy laws. So we're working now on those being in place even before we complete the survey and start issuing the cards, or we start using in major way the biometrics for the security purposes and stuff like that. So that has to be done. Then these ID cards will be separate from the ID cards that GCOM use. We didn't want to collapse this into one ID card. Next thing you'll hear, oh, PPP want to take over GCOM function. So we said, you can do whatever you want there. But here, these ID cards would have to need a separate piece of legislation. We're working on that too. So we're mapping all of the processes across government where the public interfaces with government to automate them. So a lot of work is being done on the cyber master plan to take our country into a new era. But along with all of this, cyber security will become more important, the point you made. So if everything now, government operates entirely online, we have to also build a cyber security capability so that we can protect this infrastructure, the cyber infrastructure that we have. So it's a lot of work being done at the policy level to get that done in government. Yeah, sure.
For oil companies, not just Exxon, but oil companies, will this be released to the public so that they can scrutinize the expenditure of these companies? Or I think at the press conference you said that if you release it, the media would want to spin it, but particularly Kaiser.
Yeah, but if it's required by the PSA and it's good practice, I don't see why not. But I can't say that now because you have a way of lying too. Like one time, not you. I don't mean you, right? So don't let me say that about you. You're okay. So I know where the biasness comes from. It's the editor. He puts in these headlines and tell the reporters. The reporters call me and say, we're fed up with this man, but we're working here. You know, that he changes the headlines or stories and stuff. So the thing is that I don't want to be caught up with that, like the headlines. But we're in normal business practice. A person like GRA, if GRA has your data, you got a company, you want GRA release your data to everybody? Yeah. Oh, really? If you're in a public interest, well, that is how it's governed, because there are some things in the Companies Act, etc. There is some level of confidentiality. So that's why government has 2 audits that's been done. One audit for whether the expenditure is appropriate in accordance with the PSA, and you've seen now that, imagine we're getting criticized by the same Kaichor News. We selected this local group to do the audit. We wanted to build capacity. We said, come in with a foreign group. Let's give the foreigners all the work. Kaichor News was saying the foreigners are whitewashing everything, the foreign groups. Let's come together and audit the report. So they had some findings, which is what there are eyes. They had some adverse findings. Exxon was written to. And Kaichor then said, oh, we're in hot water now because they had some adverse findings. The people we hired to look through and get the adverse findings to see that the spending is accurate and in accordance with the PSA, that we are in hot water now because we will be cooking up with Exxon how to avoid these adverse findings. We were the ones, the government of Guyana, who hired this group to review and to get that discover the adverse findings. And they said, we will cook up with Exxon how to avoid the adverse findings. We could have simply hired Glenn Lal to do the audit and you wouldn't find anything. And then that would have been the best way to do with it, and then we wouldn't have had to cook up anything. It's utter nonsense. So we'll look at it later. Thanks.
If the audits for the priority of the first that we got, and said to us, we just want to know if it has been done.
I don't trust you when you quote Vic. I don't trust Kaichor to quote Vic. When Vikram Bharrat tells me himself, then I'll deal with it. Okay? Right, thank you. But, yeah.